Welcome to Life Mastery Radio with Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey, the show that dives into the science of higher consciousness with inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. Join Todd, Jackie, and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. It's all right here with stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Now, here's your hosts, Todd and Jackie.
Hey, it's another groovy day, and most of you know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. That's because it's Life Mastery Radio Day. Yay! And it's also groovy is because when I start off my day, before my feet hit the ground, I already decided it's going to be a groovy day. So I start off feeling groovy, go through my day feeling groovy. Something might happen, something might change, but I always just think back, hey, I started out in a groovy mood. I can change this and turn it around. And it does. It works. It's magic. You too could have that. A third reason it's a groovy day is I get to hang out with my really cool friend, really good friend, really groovy friend, Jackie Bailey. Hi, Jackie.
Hello, everybody.
What am I forgetting?
I don't know, but you've talked before about writing another book, and I think the title of your next book is Feeling Groovy, for sure. That's totally.
You are amazing. You are a genius. Feeling groovy.
And
that song's in my head.
How to live a groovy life, because groovy is a word that we don't use very much anymore. I know it's like your word, but you could create this comeback for the word groovy.
I'll have to tell you a funny story about that word, but I want to remind our listeners that today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.com. You can go there, and any links that we talk about with our guests today will be there. Jackie writes blog posts about every show, so all of our shows are listed there. That's at www.lifemasteryradio.com. And sign up for our newsletter. Jackie puts out a newsletter once a week. It highlights who's been on the show, who's coming on the show, and of course, her infamous blog post about who was just on the show. So it's all things life mastery, and we don't use that email for anything else other than that. It goes right to you, right to your email, and you'll see it in your inbox, and you'll get excited and read all about it. And then you can go to the YouTube channel and watch that show or look for it on Facebook. So it's pretty easy. You stay in tune with Life Mastery Radio. Every week, Jackie and I bring you great guests who are on the cutting edge of their own becoming, and they're just pushing you off that edge for you to become your own becoming.
Become whatever you want to be.
I should have done some exercises this morning, right? But I was going to tell you, so many years ago, I was in treatment for alcoholism, and it was group therapy, and they gave out this list of feeling words, and we were supposed to pick out a feeling word, and then we'd share about it, right? Well, I didn't see my word on the list. No, I guess we handed a piece of paper in, and then she would call on us. I didn't see my word on the list, so I wrote in groovy, and I handed it in, and she chastised me. She goes, "That's not a feeling word. You can't use that word." I said, "Hey, that's my word. You're going to use it, so ask me about it." I was kind of a smart ass back then. But yeah, I'll never forget that. I thought I was done for, but then no. Worked out. So, and it's been with me ever since. That word has been with me. So
is that the first time you became groovy, or have you been groovy for longer than that?
Well, I consider myself to be groovy. I grew up in the 60s, so that was a big word back then.
Sure.
And yeah.
So has it been your signature word then since you were a kid?
Yeah, I used to draw a guy called Joe Cool, and you remember back in it was a cartoon, I think. And you remember back in the early 70s, there was all those posters with that guy kicked back and his leg out and just keep on trucking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a takeoff of that. But
Got it.
I think it's always been a part of me, Jackie.
Good. Well, It's good that, I mean, I think we should all have a word that just resonates with us. That's our word. We
I
can use
agree.
it. So absolutely. I
I
think that's
totally
awesome.
agree. Okay, on with the show. I think that we've talked about everything that we were going to talk about. Both of our books are also on the website. You can check it. Jackie has way more than me. She has like 6 books now. I only have 1. I got to get on the ball. And I think the next book is Feeling Groovy. Da,
There
da,
you
da.
go. It's your philosophy, how to heal after cancer, right? Feeling groovy.
Well,
It's it.
you're hitting on all cylinders this morning.
Totally it.
And here I'm hit and miss.
You're like the little engine that could, but nevertheless, the engine could still do it. It might have taken a little, challenging trial, but you did it. So
We have an
good.
amazing guest for you
Yep.
today. She is a overcomer too, and this is Jackie's guest. So I'll let Jackie take it away with the introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be able to introduce our audience to Dorothy. Actually, she's Dorothy Graham O'Dell, and she has turned her life of reading books, or love of reading books, into writing books. And in fact, in 2021, she wrote The Overcomer Facing Challenges with Faith and Courage. And then a year later, she wrote The Overcomer Playbook. And she shares her story in these books about how she's learned to overcome. So now she's a keynote speaker, and she produces and hosts 2 really powerful shows, one of which I was very honored to be a part of, The Unstoppable Overcomers and The Power Half Hour Unstoppable Business Owners, which is what I got to be interviewed on, and I really appreciate that. Dorothy believes that everyone has a story, and what she does with her shows is she spotlights business owners, their mission, their stories, and she helps their magnificent selves and business savvy get out into the world. So she's doing some wonderful things. And she's also a great supporter of veterans. And so she's been working with her heart and soul with veterans for the last couple of years, and we appreciate that as well. So I'm honored to introduce our guest today, Dorothy Graham O'Dell. Welcome, Dorothy.
Thank you so much. The one word that comes to my mind is groovy kind of love.
Groovy kind of love. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that one.
That's a song too.
We got a groovy kind of
Kind of love. that either can be like a book, your next book, or maybe at least a blog post, if nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. Who was that did that? Was it Genesis? Phil Collins? I think that's who it was, right? I may be
I think
missing
so.
a little bit, but yeah.
Collins, yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, you have a very unique story. It is
Yes.
definitely a story of overcoming, and it started from really early on in your life. You were unfortunately one of those heavier girls
Yes.
that was teased younger. And, for those of you that are parents and watching us today, there's so much bullying that goes on in school, and kids can just be so cruel. And the sad part is that cruelty happens at the times when we are being shaped and how we're forming concepts about ourselves. So listen closely to Dorothy's story, because you want to help your kids to not be bullies by telling them their greatness themselves, but also how to find the greatness in other people and share that. So Dorothy, where would you like to start with your story today? Because it's all great.
Well, thank you. And it's funny because as soon as you said that, I'm reminded it still happens today. Bullying still happens today. As a matter of fact, before the Christmas break here, I had to go to the principal's office for my stepson, and I was in there with his mom. And so we sat down with the principal because he's being bullied. Kids, you can be different and you could still be okay. I don't understand why there has to be this divide, but or make fun of people that are different. And so I guess start present day and work my way back.
Okay.
So it's sad that it still happens today. And I see some of the same patterns. Like, he's a little bit chunky. He used to be so skinny when I first met him, but I don't know. I think life happened, and and he's a unique child, and he loves video games, and so he has a one-track mind, and so he doesn't understand, that some kids, that might not be their thing. But I just be kind no matter what, I guess, is the message for today. Be groovy in that. And so yeah, so my story, it's funny. I started off very, very skinny and would not eat. So my parents got concerned and sent me to the doctor. Well, the doctor gave me some medication, and I wish I would have known what that medication was to this day and get the antidote to it,
Yeah.
because then I started to eat, right? And then in my household, when things were great, we ate. When things were not so great, we ate. Those were the things, like my grandmother, and her sister were very obese. And so I grew up with that in our family, and so no matter what the occasion, we used food to power through it. And so it was just like one of those lifelong journeys, and I ballooned up. And then I've spent the last 20-30 years trying to get rid of it, right? And as an emotional eater, it's become very, very difficult to get that under control. And then of course hormones now play a place in that. But growing up with that, like, kids were cruel. I can remember it seemed like every day one of the guys was on me at school, and it would become so, like, I didn't want to go to school anymore. And it was, so then of course, to stuff down the emotion, I would eat more. And so it just has always played a huge part in my life. And of course, hurt people. So when you're getting bullied, then you take it out on those people that, are easy targets, is what we used to call them back then, probably still today. And which, doesn't make it right. And, I've apologized to people that I have bullied myself after being bullied, because, that's what people do, unfortunately. And so it was just a cycle of, and then of course I had extreme low self-esteem. So the first guy that told me he loved me, I believed him. What an idiot that I was then. And so
no.
Sorry?
I said, you don't know what you don't know.
Well, that's the truth, right? And that's the truth. So growing up that way, and I never really told my parents, what was really going on. I don't know why, but I kept everything to myself. And my parents were going through their own little thing. They were, I say chronically ill. My dad had his first stroke at 30. My mom went undiagnosed with angina and lupus for over 20 years.
Wow.
I can't even remember. I can maybe count on one or two hands growing up the amount of times that she would put a 40-hour work week in. Like, she was chronically sick or at home or doing something. And so, at home, I would have to play the housemaid. I learned to cook at a very young age. So I took care of the house, cooked and cleaned and all that while my dad was at work, or my mom not feeling well or at work herself. And so I just took on the persona of, I guess, the housewife. Didn't realize the added pressure that I'd put on me, and I just thought all that was normal, right? And didn't know anything different. And so just building up on that pressure and those expectations that I put on myself, I'm sure my parents never told me, that was what was expected. Yes, we had chores as a kid. Yes, kids, if you're listening today, we actually had chores that we had to do.
Yes.
It was expected of you to do stuff. Right. And life wasn't handed to us on a platter, right? As it is now with these kids. And so, just taking, one step at a time, just keep going on in life like that. So until I got into the abusive relationship, he was very mentally and verbally abusive. And I didn't think I could get better. So I stayed in it for 4 years.
There's a part that I found very interesting, because it seemed to me you've always been an overcomer, because didn't you just buckle down, and before, when you graduated high school, you were on the honor roll?
I was, yes.
Yeah. So
I was on the honor roll.
You became an overcomer early on, maybe you didn't realize it, but you were determined and you were set at a goal and you did it.
Right. Yeah. That has been my philosophy. I just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I don't even at times now, I don't even give myself credit for, the things that I've actually accomplished. I have a business partner, and she says, well, do you realize what we did last year? And I'm like, but because I didn't reach the main target, I didn't think that we did anything. And so sometimes you have to slow down and really appreciate, like Todd said, yeah, I've been overcoming my entire life.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. And people go, well, how do you do it? I'm like, I don't know. I just put one foot in front of the other and I don't give up. That's all I know. And
Yeah.
so how do you teach that to other people? How do you teach perseverance? I don't know. You just do it.
Yeah. You're right. That is a really hard thing to teach people, because if they haven't had challenges in their life, they really don't even know how to identify it, right? And so it is something really hard to teach. One of the stories that you shared, though, about your early school was that you were in the cafeteria sitting on a chair and it actually broke.
Yes.
And I cannot even imagine how devastating that would feel to a young person to have that happen to them.
Yes.
And yet you
Yeah.
had a very uncaring teacher. So maybe that story is something you want to share for a second.
Yes. I won't. Well, what the heck? I'll say his real name. I don't think I used his real name in the book. His real name is Mr. Luckabee. So if you were in Tilbury, Ontario, and you had the pleasure of having him as your teacher, really great guy. And so, yeah, that actually happened because back then we didn't have a cafeteria. It was in the classroom. So I was in the classroom and that happened, and I ran out of the door. I went and hid in the bathroom. And so I waited and waited and waited in there. And finally until I think it was after recess, because after you eat lunch, then you go for recess and then you come back in. So he caught me in the hallway and he points to get into the classroom. And I'm like, I am not dealing with this crap. Because back then in grade 6 or 7, I was just like, I don't want to deal with this. Just leave me alone. Let me hide. Right. And so he brought me into the classroom and all the kids were still sitting there. And he said, that's not cool to do what you guys did. And to, I don't know the exact words. I can't remember the exact words, but it was along the lines of, that very uncool of you to embarrass another fellow classmate. And so, yeah. So he made them apologize, but still I was like, just let me go home type thing, right? I don't want to deal with this today.
Right.
And so, yeah, no. And it was funny because you brought me to another story. I didn't have him that year, but I had him the following year. And it's funny because I sucked at math back then, really bad. And he actually had me go to summer school. And I was just like, what an ass, right? But it was one of the best things that he could have done for me. And so in that, he made fun of me in front of everybody about my math skills. I must have did really crappy on some homework. And he made a comment about my dad. And I'm like, well, no one ever, you can say whatever you want about me, but don't you say anything about my parents or my brother. And so I stood up in front of the classroom and I said, don't ever say anything about my dad again, because he something along the lines of, he asked who helped me with my homework or something like that, because I must have got everything wrong. And so anyways, at the end of the year speech, he had said to me, he says, there's one person I respect the most in this classroom. And I'm just like, okay, so who is this? Like, out of 20 or 30 kids that was in the classroom, who is this person, this brainchild? And he said it was me, because I actually was the first student that ever stood up to him, ever, in all his years of teaching. And I was just like, and that still stuck with me. Like, that was a lot of time. I'm 47 now. I forget how old you are in grade 7, grade 8. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, that was a long time ago. And I was just like, wow, here
Yeah.
I am. I have arrived, right?
Well, and I think that's a really good lesson because sometimes, people like you, I mean, your book is definitely a wonderful story of these challenges that you faced, and I really appreciate the story aspect of it. But at the same time, you were learning how to be an overcomer. So there were with these challenges, there were also people like this teacher that were put in your line of influence that were telling you, no, you need to get back in there in the classroom and you need to
Yes.
just move forward. And you need to not worry about this and not think about it and just be strong and da 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 da.
Right.
So there were people that were put there to continue to help you see, yeah, I'm an overcomer. I can handle this. I'm just going to keep moving forward. And I think that's important for all of us to recognize is that with all of the challenges, there have been, signs that we're on the right track, even though it's been hard, right?
Yeah. Right. And it's funny because there's a book out that's called I Can Do Hard Things Well by her last name is Doyle. I forget her first name. And I listened to that book because I was listening to it on Audible and I'm like, how many things do we do that we say that we could do well, right? And just having that in the forefront, you've gotten through every hard day so far in your life. Just keep putting your foot in front of the other one more time is
Mm-hmm.
basically what I get out of that. But yeah, you're right. Life throws you lemons, so make lemonade. And just be groovy in it.
Yeah. Totally.
Looks like, oh, I thought Todd was saying something, but he's muting himself.
Yeah.
So, so you're right. Yeah, life
Yeah.
lessons and teachers all the way through. To keep putting that foot in front of the other.
So did your book then just come to you really easily as you started thinking about these experiences and writing them down in stories? Had you been keeping a journal so it was easy to kind of copy and paste, if you will, or what prompted you to start writing this book? Who did you write it for?
Okay, so great question. So I had been keeping a journal and not realizing what it was I was going to use these journals for. And because of um sometimes I have memory fog. I chalk it up to stress, old age, and my husband and his child. So whatever we want to blame it on, whatever. And so that's why I keep a journal. And it's funny because I had been thinking about it for a while, and I said to my girlfriend, I said I should write a book. I said, because do you ever think of, man, I just have gone through so much in life, and you have no idea what it's for. Sometimes you're like, why? And I always say, don't ask the question why, just like, why not me? Right? Because if it's not for, I always believe that we go through things to help other people. And
Right.
so that's why I use my life experiences for other people. That's why I shared it. Right. And so when I said to my girlfriend, Trish, I said, Trish, I should just write a book. She goes, you should. I said, and who is going to buy? And she said, well, I would. Ironically enough, the first person to buy my book was my husband's ex-wife. So
Wow.
she wanted to hear our love story, I guess.
Right.
She was like, how different is it from her and hers and my husband's? But anyways, that's I'm not going to call her out on it, but I'm pretty, because after she read a little bit, she goes, oh, so you're the catalyst for that. I'm just like, yep.
Interesting.
But ironically, I wrote it so that people would know that they were never alone in their circumstances. So, because sometimes when we're going through the suck, it can be dark. It could be like we feel like we're going through this alone. It could be traumatizing in some cases for some people, and we always think that we always go through this alone. And so I just wanted people to realize, wait a minute, if I can go through this, so can you. And number two, you're not alone. And a lot, since we've been working with veterans for the last 2 years and dealing with PTSD and things like that, a lot of the slogans that I hear from our veterans or first responders is, never alone. And that was one of the things that they wanted people to realize too. So, that was a really good connection within that community. So yeah, that's the whole reason why I wrote it, was for other people, so they could say, hey, they're not the only ones, and just keep on going.
Yeah, that's
Well,
excellent.
what is it that you've learned? We kind of touched on this a little bit, but what is it that you've learned to help other people through struggles? Is there a strategy? Is there a technique? Are there some things that that you do? Because it's a part of life. We all will come up against something, and something that will push back on us and cause us to grow. But I'm
Right.
just curious if you identified any strategies that you use to help you get through it. I know for me, with the cancer, one of the strategies that I used every day was, all I got to worry about is today. That's all I have to do, is get through today, and then I can get some rest, I can get some sleep, and start over again tomorrow.
Yeah, I love that. And there's several things that I've learned. So I'll give you the top three. So I'm an overachiever, and in growing up with my father, it was do, right? And so what that taught me is, if I wanted to be loved or accepted, I had to do for others, right? To a lot of the times, up until I really learned this within the last 5 years, to the detriment of myself. So I was a freaking stress ball, and I did not even know the word self-care. And ironically enough, what got me into the self-care mode was when my dad got diagnosed with cancer. So here I am in my 40s. I had never found really a great love of my life until I reached 40. And so, make a long story short, we finally got engaged in November of 2018. So I've taken all my life to get to this point, to find the one, right? Get to that point. It should be an exciting time in my life. April 2019, I get the phone call nobody wants. I need to talk with you because I just got some news. And my dad told my brother and I at the same time that he had lung cancer. So I'm like, okay, great. So my hero is now diagnosed with cancer, and I'm trying to plan a wedding in all of this. And I work in a very high stress industry. And when I take things to the degree that most people don't, like I pride myself on getting things right, and the first time, which that doesn't ever really generally happen, because something will
They
mess
call
up,
that
right?
perfectionism.
I'm a perfectionist. Yes, thank you for that. I'm a recovering perfectionist. And so, added my own stress on top of the stressful situations. One of the best things that the Windsor Cancer Clinic got us, other than the treatment that my dad needed, was they said, hey, it's open to the entire family. Would you like to see a therapist? And I was just like, okay, yes. I cave, God. I cave. I'm finally asking for help. After all of this, after 40 some odd years, I will reach and ask for help. And so Cherie, I think was her name, an amazing counselor. The very first thing she said to me was, what is your self-care like? After I expressed to her what my childhood was like, on top of, taking care of my parents when they were ill back then, and now I have a husband that's a diabetic, and then a stepchild that has an autoimmune disease. And so, when my stepchild was sick, he's sick, like he's down and out, and that's why he was so skinny, because he just wouldn't eat. So I have all of these life forces on top of a full-time job. And when she asked me that question, I laughed in her face, and she said, well, you know what? You better start taking care of yourself, or you're going to die of a heart attack. And I had already been on blood pressure medication. At one point back when I was in the abusive relationship, I had been on antidepressants, but I quickly got myself off. Medication for me is not the answer for, that's great for a lot of people, but for me, that's not what I wanted. It didn't do a whole lot for me anyways, except numb me out, which, if I have to be numbed out to live life, that's not how we should be living life. just my opinion. Again, no judgment to anybody else. So she started giving me some tools to put in my toolbox on, you know, reading, which I'd already done. So I didn't realize that was a form of self-care until, you know, she told me about that, and taking time for myself. And it, you know, just because you're in a relationship doesn't mean that you should be with your spouse 24/7. You know, you can have you time, and you don't have to incorporate the entire family, which was something that I had learned through her. And just really, and it's okay to feel things. I tell you, I stuffed things and I buried my feelings so deep that it actually took 3 years. It felt like 3 years for my heart to unthaw, because I would just keep on piling it on top and never allowed myself to feel the feelings. So
Right.
here when I finally let the dam burst, it was like a flood. And
Mm-hmm.
I never really had any true girlfriend relationships, you know, back then. Before I had formed my very first girlfriend relationship actually just before my dad got cancer. And she led me to 6 other women. And now, truly, without my tribe, I would not have gotten through half of what we've gone through in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another thing that I've learned. Find your tribe, and, you know, hold each other, number one, accountable, and number two, it's okay to talk to them about what you're going through.
Just describe for us maybe a little more in detail what self-care looks like for you, because I think a lot of people get into that trap, right? They think, oh, this is only happening to me and I'm special. This is only something that I can relate to, and nobody else is dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with. And you know, you hear that over and over and over again. And but yet, then once they do find a support group or realize self-care is a way to go, it's a total different ball game.
Yeah.
What does that
And
look like for you?
I love that you alluded that and asked for me, because self-care is different for everybody. You know, for me, it's not a hot bath. I know women that just like, oh, they're in ecstasy when they go in their bathtub. Not me. Self-care for me is taking my walks, and reading is really are my go-tos. um if I feel triggered, or if I really just need to get away from everybody and everything, the first thing I do is go for a walk. As a matter of fact, a lot of my videos that I do, I'm walking.
I
And
know.
part of that is also because this new year, I ended last year with completing 75 hard. And for those of you that don't know what 75 hard is, it's 2 45-minute workouts per day, one of which has to be outside. You have to read 10 pages of a personal development book per day. You have to drink a gallon of water. You need to take a picture of yourself every day. And what am I missing? I feel like I'm missing something.
Mm.
But anyway, so yeah, that is what 75 hard is. So it's actually stacking you up to become highly successful, because it's more like a mind game than anything. The first round I did it, I lost like 5 pounds, but it was more the mental clarity that I got. And because if we stick to a routine, and I'm a really big stickler on my routine. My morning routine is insane. Most people cringe when I tell them, because I start my day off at 3:30 in the morning. My first hour and a half of the day is me time. So get up at 3:30. I'm doing A Course in Miracles as well right now. So I'll read my lesson and my chapter. I do my 5 gratitudes. If I have time for meditation, I'll go into my meditation at that time. If not, I leave it to the end of the day now. And then I do my 45-minute workout. I'm in my office for 30 minutes to do my first post of the day for all my social medias. And then I go cuddle with my husband for 20 minutes, because cuddling is important. And, you know, they say there's a study done. I don't know the statistics, but for people who've never had a hug or that don't get hugs, they are like more moody and not a lot of clarity, things like that. So yeah, I start my morning off with that. I kick his butt out of bed, go make our lunches, get him off to work, get me off to work. I have to start work at 7 o'clock each day. So that is how I start my morning. And when I tell that to people, I don't say that it's for everybody, but in order for me to set myself up right, and that is part of my self-care, because it's not that I used to, back growing up, I was not a morning person at all. Like if you talk to me the first 20 minutes of the day, I was just like, leave me alone. My grandmother used to come and visit, and she would be always so chipper in the morning, and she'd be like talking to me. I said to my mom, I'm like, can you tell her to stop? I can't handle this. So maybe that's why I start my first hour and a half of the day with no one talking to me, but just getting things done.
Yeah.
Right. Get moving.
Well,
So you describe it as being regimented, right? That is part of your self-care, is just regimentation. Does anything else come to mind? What about when adversity strikes? Do you pause? Do you stop and
well, and that's funny. I do pause now because I used to be like the atomic bomb. Growing up, my temper was hot and quick, like really on a very short fuse. I'm part Irish, part Scottish, so that gives you some kind of indication of my heritage. And so I actually told my mom and dad, I'm like, you didn't think before you procreated, obviously, because two fiery tempers, hello, together. Anyways, that being said, I have trained myself not to have such a quick hot temper anymore. And as a matter of fact, I will err on the side of not saying too much in that moment because I want to think and reflect. I always know there's three sides to every story: mine, theirs, and in the middle is the truth, right?
Mhm.
And so, do I occasionally flip off? Yes, but I have got to be like, something has set me off prior to that, and it's just, everybody has a bad day. But I tend to internalize it first and then go back. Whereas before,
I think there's a good way to put that. It's engage brain before shifting mouth into gear.
There's that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
So tell us about your shows then, because you've disciplined yourself so much, and you realize that regimentation is part of your self-care, but you do so much for other people as well by these shows that you put on. So I would love to hear a little bit more about how you came up with the idea to do these shows, and maybe tell us about some of the people that you've interviewed and how they've impacted you or influenced you in some way.
Great question. So I got the book out and tried to market myself, but no one knows who this chick is from Windsor, Ontario. As a matter of fact, when you say Ontario or Canada, Americans go, what?
Where's that?
Where's that? What lake is that by? I just was asked on a podcast on the weekend. Well, where's Windsor, Ontario? What lake is that by? I'm like, okay, dude, do you know where Detroit, Michigan is? I'm literally 5 minutes from there. Oh, okay. Now they get it. So with that being said, of course you got to network like crazy, because how else are you going to get the word out about what you're doing, what you're up to? So in networking, I met some incredible people, and I learned that, hey, wait a minute, I'm not the only one that was going through what I went through, and they had some incredible stories of overcoming as well. And so I thought, well, why not start a show? As a matter of fact, as soon as I thought that, well, I didn't even think that. I saw an advertisement on LinkedIn, and I thought LinkedIn was just for strictly trying to find a job. No idea what really LinkedIn's for. It's a whole community within a community, guys. Trust me, you got to get over there and put yourself out there. And so I saw this advertisement for a live stream course, and I thought, well, what's a live stream course? So anyways, took it. And within 6 weeks, you had to get your show up and running. I'm like, okay, not a problem. If I can do anything, I can do this. So I did it, and I come up with the name. It's funny because I pulled people on Facebook, because back then I had like, well, I'm still heavily engaged in Facebook, but just had gotten involved in LinkedIn. And so I pulled people on Facebook and I said, hey, this is the name of my book. What should I name the name of the show? And so I said, whichever one I pick, I'll give you a copy of the book. So they came up with Unstoppable Overcomers. So I thought, okay, great. Love it. It rhymes with the theme, or goes with the theme of the book. So it's like Unstoppable Overcomers Productions over here. And so that's how the show was born. And so the people that I was networking with, I'm like, well, will you want to come on my story, on my show, and share your story? And I had been, like I said, that community that's over on LinkedIn. I had my very first episode was Nancy Burrows. She is an amazing lady. Her story, well, go see it. It's episode number 1 on my YouTube channel. And she was abused by her grandfather, is the gist of it. And so she was my very first episode for that show. And yeah, so that we're now at 142 episodes. We've had people like Donna Eller on the show, who is a model. She formed the union for the models.
Wow.
So yes, so she was not only a model herself, but she formed the union for the models back in the day. And she's on Sears catalog. So if you don't remember what a Sears catalog is, guys, Google it. I know I'm dating myself here.
Wow.
I grew up with it.
Yeah. So she's been on our show. We've had, oh my gosh, just so many incredible people. We're actually, this Monday, we're having the Masked Saint. If you know Dr. Chris Whaley, he was a professional wrestler. Actually, he wrestled against The Undertaker back in the day. So from wrestler to pastor. So he'll be on our show Monday. And he has not only a couple books, but he also has a movie called The Masked Saint. Absolutely incredible movie.
Wow.
Check it out. It's on Prime, but if you don't get it on Prime, it's on Tubi as well. So check those two out. I'm trying to think. There's just been so many incredible people. Like we've hit many topics, from abuse to rape to overcoming adversity to bullying to low self-esteem. You name it. We've covered the topics on the show. And I want to get Tom Brady on the show. So if anybody has a connection to Tom Brady, would love that. It's funny because we started our year last year in Arizona at the Super Bowl. We had Roman Gabriel III. There we go. Roman Gabriel III on our show, with Sold Out Youth Foundation. He was a quarterback for, was it the Ravens? I can't remember exactly what team he was for, but anyways, he was a quarterback in the day. And his dad was a quarterback. And he decided that his brother had overdosed, and he decided that his platform was going to be helping kids to say no to drugs and to be sold out on that. So we went to Arizona last year, and we volunteered at his gala, brought my husband actually said yes, he'd do it. So him and I went down there. We helped at the gala, and that was the very first time that I was in a professional recording studio. Did a couple interviews down there. We had Trent Clark. I interviewed Trent Clark, interviewed Derek Bowles, Chris Draper, the snapper for the Cardinals back in the day. So yeah. And so
I put Aaron Rodgers on your list because he just got booted off a podcast on ESPN.
Really?
You'll have to look into it.
I'll look into it. I am going to say that Aaron Rodgers is not one of my favorite players, but that's okay. He doesn't have to be favorite to be on my show.
He is a character.
So how do you find your guests, Dorothy? Are you finding them through LinkedIn? Or are you being introduced to them by other people who do know them? How do you find your guests?
Well, it's this power of networking. That's how everybody and I did find this on Facebook. There's a group called Need a Guest. So I've had a couple of their guests on, but majority of the successful, like every interview that I've had has been successful. But you know, for people showing up on time, is through networking. You know, build that relationship first and then have them on the show. So
Well,
yeah,
it's funny
I've
you
been,
should say that because you and I were introduced by Dr. Philip Agrios, who's been on our
yes,
show twice as a guest. So it does, networking is the key, right?
yes. And he was on my Power Half Hour show.
Nice.
Yes. And I
Mm.
started that show because when the pandemic hit, our community got hit really hard. Like a lot of the businesses had to
Mm.
close. And I thought, how can I give back to the business owners that are struggling out there? And now we're on a even platform because let's face it, you know, we can do business anywhere in the world through Zoom or whatever. So that was one of the positive signs of COVID,
Mhm.
because now we're doing business around the world. And so, yeah, so I thought, what better way to give back? And so that's why I started the Power Half Hour.
That's awesome. And that's specifically for business owners then.
Yes, that one's specifically for business owners. And yeah, so they'll give our business owners, I always ask them, you know, what 3 things did you have to overcome to get to where you're at in business today? Because I think that's important. And the number one thing is, of course, your mindset,
Mm.
overcoming your mindset, right? Because if you have stinking thinking, um, then you're not going to get anywhere in life or business. And so, yeah,
I
that,
think self-care is another huge one. I really do. I think self-care is, if you're not taking care of you, I mean, if I wanted to give you a banana and I didn't have a banana, I can't give you a banana.
that is true. That is true.
So you also help vets, I understand. Tell us, maybe
Yes.
go into that a little bit. What does that look like? You're a busy.
Oh,
I thought Jackie was busy, but you're a
well, you know, keeping busy gets me out of trouble or gets me into trouble, whatever way you want to think about it.
One way or the
Uh,
other.
so it's funny. My very first veteran that I had on my show was January 31st of 2022. Greg Bicknell, 28-year Air Force veteran.
Mm.
And Greg came on and shared the plea about what our veterans are going through. 22 a day were dying by suicide back then. Now the new stat was 44. And when he was telling me all this, I was just like, you're kidding me. He goes, yeah, they train us to kill, but they don't train us like afterwards, like what to do with that, like what we've seen and things like that. So of course, when I'm passionate, I get like, oh wait, stand behind me, Satan, because there's no way that these people who put their lives on the line are gonna deal with this alone, right? And of course there's some that don't don't want help, and that's perfectly fine because there's civilians that don't want help too.
Right.
But I'm like, for those veterans that have put their lives on the line for us and for our country, you can bet your ass that I'm not going to let them suffer in silence. And so Greg was the catalyst for that. And so I'm like, okay, I'm opening my platform for any veteran that wants to come on and share their story. And I bet you I've probably interviewed over close to 40 anyways between both shows. And he got me thinking, and I'm like, I feel such a deep connection and kinship to male or female veterans, like it doesn't matter. And
Mhm.
I'm like, why is that? And I knew that my uncle was his career was in the armed forces. He was, I don't know what his thing was. He was a secretary, I think, in the armed forces. And I can remember him he never stayed local. So he would be out in Calgary or Kingston, I think was the closest. So Kingston is maybe 7-8 hours north of where we live. And I could remember on our holiday going up there to see him. And so, and I always remembered what it was like, you know, those advertisements that they have for when, you know, the veterans come home, and especially around
Mhm.
Christmas time. And I can watch those now and I still get choked up. And
Yeah.
one of the always things growing up, I always wanted my uncle to come home and get me out of school and we just go have a fun day. Of course, that never happened. But that's okay. He didn't know that that was part of, you know, my biggest
Tennessee.
dreams that I wanted. Right. And so I thought, you know, and I really didn't think of those times. Like, we grew up in the Canadian Legion. Every Friday or Saturday, we'd be at the Legion with my grandfather when we were able to go in, when we were of age. And, you know, I didn't think of those times. I guess life had just like piled on top of me that I forgot
Mhm.
all of that. And in finding that, I found my roots. You know, my great grandfather was in the Navy. He was a welder on one of the ships. And yes, he was Canadian, but he was stationed out in San Francisco. Um, so, you know, learning about some of what he had went through and seeing some of his Legion cards and things like that. And so, yeah, that's how I got involved with the veterans. And I actually joined Greg's, at the time it was called Camaraderie Rescue Mission. It was a nonprofit that he has for veterans. And so I joined that. I'm on the board of directors for that.
Wow, good for you.
Uh, so yeah, I just, you know, I will never turn my back away or, you know, not help anyone, let alone a veteran.
Hmm. Well, good
Yeah,
for you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Todd is a veteran. He understands what the support, how important that support is.
Oh my goodness, ladies, it looks like we have about 5 minutes left. And I wanted to make sure, Dorothy, that we talked about you've started a support group and you're looking for people to join. Maybe tell us a little bit about that, because it's not really a mastermind. It's more of a, what were we talking about? It's a MOI.
It's a moai. Yes, you gave me the word moai. And so it's funny because I don't really have it all together yet. So it's one of those, it's a brainchild of which I will have more details very soon. But what I'm thinking of is, you know, inviting people to come in and being a support to everybody, you know, have some coaching in there, have some different trainings, but being more of a support to each other is how I'm is what I'm thinking at. And so yeah, we'll be starting that within the next week or two. Uh in my mind, I got to have it all on paper before I get it out there. And we were talking about it a little bit before the show, and I'm like, oh, I should have had my crap together and had a definitive what it would look like. But you know, I am just speaking this into existence. So yeah, for those people that want more self-care and find a tribe and to be held accountable, you know, for your goals or your aspirations or your dreams, and networking with other people, then this would be what that would be.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
excellent.
come
So
join
how do
us.
people get a hold of you to find out when that's starting or how to be involved in it?
Yeah, I will have it up on my website by the end of the week. But definitely, if you or by the end of the weekend. How's that? By the end of the weekend, it will be up there. And I'm just looking at my schedule and thinking, don't overcommit.
You can
And
be an overcomer, but not an overcommitter. Is that what you're saying?
that, well, I am an overcommitter, but learning not to overcommit. So overcoming that. And so just reach out to me on Facebook or LinkedIn at Dorothy Graham O'Dell. Check, you know, message me or even in the comments of the show, and I'll reach, you know, look at the comments. And yeah, we'll get your questions answered. We'll get you the information, and we'll make life easier for everybody. I think we go further together, and collaboration has been my word for the last 3 years.
Mm.
So yours is groovy, Todd, and mine's collaboration. Uh,
Nice.
And groovy. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, sharing your stories, and you know, it's kind of an intimate get together, and you know, you really jumped in there. Is there a last minute thought or a last minute message you would have for our listeners today?
yes, they. There's a couple things. You're never alone.
Mm.
Reach out to somebody if you need help. It's okay to ask for help. As somebody, it took 40 some odd years to understand that. I wish I would have got that sooner. So definitely, and self-care is key.
Mm.
Because you know, without it, you can't help other people. So by not taking care of yourself, you're not being selfish. No matter what anybody tries to tell you.
Nice. Well, thank you,
Thank
Dorothy. Really appreciate all that you're doing for yourself and for others. Appreciate you sharing your story. That was so powerful, and
Thank you.
putting it down so we can all read it. And I wish you the best of luck with both of your shows and with this new endeavor that you've got going on. It's been great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
And Todd, we'll have to talk and get you on the show.
Okay, then.
Sure. He's an overcomer for sure.
We'll talk again real soon. I'll be sending you some links to the show. I thank you again so much for showing up today as you and sharing again, like I had said. That's about all we have time for today. My biggest hope is that you will go to our YouTube channel and check out some of our other shows. Tell a friend about us. You saw this really cool podcast, and Todd and Jackie just have some of the best guests in the land that share their great thoughts and ideas for us to use on our very own life mastery journey. Lastly, I just want to say, please, please, please make it a great day, because it is all about choice. And you don't have to be an overcomer, but you can certainly go down that path and try. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to Life Mastery Radio. Join Todd Allen and Jackie Bailey and their guests of leading authors, speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific. Learn to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery through stories and messages to support your well-being and most evocative dreams. Visit their website, www.lifemasteryradio.com. Join their mailing list and be notified about upcoming guests. That's lifemasteryradio.com.